Hi, hello. It is future me, Amy Prokopis. I am editing this video and I just wanted to pop in here to let you guys know that I have done so many different edits. I have tried my best within my skill set to make this audio seamless, and it is still a little bit kind of grainy sounding and brassy, if that makes sense. I have tried my best. I am going to look into fixing some of these things in the future. And I don't know if part of this was just poor planning on my part when I first filmed this episode. Maybe I didn't have my mic set correctly. But anyway, I am going to put this episode out there for you guys so that I can promote Nikki and her amazing stuff, showcase her books, and some of the amazing things that she is doing. So here's the episode. I hope you guys enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Read Books, Be Kind podcast, where I, your host, Amy Prokopis, hang out with other authors and bookish people, and we talk about bookish and authorly things. Whether you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube or watching the extended version on my Patreon, we are glad that you are here. All right, I am super excited. This is our second episode with a guest, another one of my writerly friends. So I am very excited that you are joining me, Nikki. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your books and just your author life and a little bit about who you are.
All right. Well, my name is Nikki Chartier. If you mispronounce my last name, you'll probably say it cooler than we do, so I won't correct you. I have been writing for publication since about 2010 and started publishing in 2013. I started with YA contemporary because it felt easier and less intimidating. But I have now branched into YA new adult fantasy paranormal books. And I think I have 18 published right now. I
Oh my
could be
gosh.
wrong on that number, but it is a work in progress. I live in Mississippi. I'm married and I have a dog. And I write full time, but that does not mean I'm making full time money, just for transparency for everyone watching. And that is about it.
Well, thank you for joining us, Nikki. It's been a lot of fun learning more about you. Nikki and I actually are part of an online writing group. We're part of a masterclass together. So we've been chatting back and forth for a while. And I really, really wanted to have Nikki on this podcast because I thought that her fan base and my fan base, I think there'd be some overlap. So if you like my books, for those of you who've been following me for a while and are following my channel, and that's why you're here watching this video or listening to this right now, you should definitely check out Nikki's stuff because she writes very similar stuff. So she just said some new adult contemporary, some fantasy. So what I really have found super interesting and really relatable to my own writing is that you, Nikki, you're writing in two different genres now. So you've got the contemporary stuff and you have a whole series there. So actually, for those of you listening, her contemporary books, the Stars series, I am extremely fascinated by it. I have not gotten very far into it. A while back, Nikki had a free book promotion, and one of those books was included in that, and I downloaded it. And the covers and the vibes of it are so similar to what I think my Winter Witches series is. And so if you are somebody who's read that series of mine and really like it, I think that Nikki's series would also be very, very similar, and I think you'd really enjoy that. So she's got that. It's very bubbly, very cutesy. And then you have the Nightfall series, which is darker, more fantasy. And it's funny because I always thought my book covers looked kind of crazy when I post them because I've got this super pink, super girly cover. And then the next day I'll post this like dark vampire-esque book. And I thought they just looked funny together. And I think publishing in two different genres is something that it's not talked about a ton in the indie author space. But I would say that there has been some discourse about whether or not that is a good strategy, because I think the concern is you can split your audience a little bit. So I don't know how you feel about that, Nikki, or if you've seen that in your own audience, or if, I don't know, what does, I don't know, what does that feel like to you?
There's very little crossover for me, and I actually thought more people who read my YA contemporary would like migrate with me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just there's something about witches and wolves that some people are just like no. But yeah, it's been. I first started out, I was like, well, I'll just publish one under Nikki, and I'll do other one under like Nicole, so I can separate it. And I had
Yeah.
two separate Instagrams, two separate brands, and it was just way too much to keep up with. Because during the summer, I'm wanting to promote like my beach series, and then in autumn, I'm like, okay, it's spooky season, let's go all in on the paranormal.
Right.
It was just too much to balance. I was like, I've just got to bring all of this into one, and then just kind of bounce back and forth. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm kind of like I'm trying to figure out the best tagline for me as an author. Right now, I'm kind of playing with like beach reads by day, spell books by night.
Oh, that's fun.
So that's kind of what I've been pitching myself as, but it's still, I
Oh.
can't find a good balance yet. It's a work in progress.
You know, I don't have an author tagline. I mean, I always make a point to create a really strong one for each book I write. I've never thought about like using a tagline literally in my author branding though. That's actually, I think, a really good idea, and I really like yours because I think it definitely, I think it really does scream to the audience that like I write like a spectrum of stuff, and I guess that would be kind of how I pitch what I write. I write all fantasy. So my more contemporary feeling girly books are still fantasy, but I call them like fantasy lights. They're more, yeah, light and fluffy. It's more romance than fantasy. They just happen to be witches, you know? And then on the other end of the spectrum, it like flips. It's more fantasy, and the romance is not really the main plot point. So it kind of is the exact same, just a different take on like how you're telling the story and the plot. So I don't know. Maybe I need to get a tagline now. You kind of inspired me.
I always just said like I'm a young adult, new adult author, but then I was like, you know, people are going to see that and be like, well, do you write beach books or do you write like werewolf books?
You know, that's a really good like point as far as marketing goes, because I think, and maybe this ties into having like writing into different genres kind of with the marketing and everything. A lot of indie authors, I think we all kind of lament the marketing process. Everyone gets really stressed out about how to best market their books, especially right now with the landscape of social media getting ready to change so much. With the TikTok ban and everything, I think we're all in the community kind of scrambling around looking for better ways to market our books. But you're not just marketing the one product. You want readers you want a fan base. You want like a community, not just individual readers for your books. And so you really do need to market yourself just as much as like you as an author, probably just as much as you're marketing individual books.
That's what I've kind of realized lately, because I've polled my readers in my last newsletter, and I realized a lot of them are more like loyal to a series than they are to all of my books as a whole. So I'm trying to like really hone in on the community more than this series or this series, because you want people to read all your books and cross over.
Oh, for sure. I like that you pulled your newsletter. I pretty recently actually too with the change in all of the social media platforms, because that really is my marketing. That's about all the marketing I do. I don't do a lot of paid advertising. And so I've been looking a lot at what the trends are going into 2025, what everyone's expecting, and what's changed recently, because some things like Instagram, I've noticed, has started to change the platform a little bit. As I've gone to make posts, it looks different again. I know. Yeah, and things that were there, like putting categories on your post, are now not. And that looked like when it came in, you know how it works on social media. When they push something new out, it's because they want people to start using it. Like they mass use it. And so it's funny how quickly that came and went, but I think that's just the name of the game with social media right now. And I'm finding that I think maybe because of all of this change too, and there's a lot of movement between the platforms with the community of people using them, the users. I think that a lot of, at least what I'm seeing and what your poll and your newsletter made me think of, is that people seem to be really gravitating towards super authentic, really casual content. Not even like the short form content that used to be so big, like that TikTok really made famous.
Mm-hmm.
People don't seem to care so much if it's like a 3-minute video or a 5-second video. They want to like see something that's real and not filtered and heavily edited. And so it's interesting that I think you got that kind of a response from your newsletter, that people seem to be more loyal to something longer and more in depth, like a series, because I've also found that with my books, because you and I both have series on our in our backlist, and I've also found that my readers that tend to read all of my books in general, but that tend to really pay attention and engage with me, are my readers of my trilogy.
Yeah, once they get invested in like characters in a world, they just want to live in it forever, which is great. But at
Yeah,
the same time, I'm like, I can only put these characters through so much torture before I have to kind of just put a bow on it.
right. And you got to move on. You got to move on. And I don't know about you, but I don't tend to write standalones. I tend to write series anyway, because I'm that kind of a reader too. I want to know my characters as deeply as I can until I feel like I've known everything that really, like everything I need to about this person, and then I might tie that bow on. My very first book is actually a standalone. There's definitely kind of an open ending to it, to the arena, but I had originally intended for it to become a series, because the editor I used on that book, I got extremely fortunate. My little baby author self, not really knowing what I was doing, and not really budgeting well, paid way too much for a lot of things for my first book. And because of that, I also ended up finding a fantastic editor. I'm glad I had the experience. I would never pay that much again. But she was worth the money. She worked on the UK edition of The Hunger Games, which was,
Oh, wow.
I know, I was blown away. I thought, I was so starstruck that I kind of felt like I'll never get this chance again. I might as well pay the price for it now while I'm getting started. And I did learn a lot from that. And she convinced me she said that there were several plot points in there that were too interesting to just be like a fleeting thing in the book. She said, you really should either flesh this out in this book, or you could write like three more about these different subjects. And so what was originally just like my very first book was going to be kind of an experiment. I didn't even know if indie publishing was my thing or not. I just wanted to get something out there and learn by doing. And it kind of became a series that I ended up actually abandoning. I started writing book 2 and decided, kind of like you were talking about, like there comes to a point where like I can only put my characters through so much torture before I have to tie a bow on it. And the series I could see was going to get really dark. And there were just other books I felt called to write at that time. And so I shelved it. And that's, I think, the only project I've ever done that to. I usually write an entire draft before I decide if I'm going to pursue publishing it or not. I don't usually give up halfway in. So have you ever had experience with that too, where, especially writing like 2 different genres, so you have to put on 2 different hats, to me it feels like. How do you balance those 2, and how do you know what project to go for next?
Um, well, as far as shelving projects, I don't normally do that. Normally, once I dive in, I'm kind of in. The only times I've ever done that were when I tried to pants a novel instead of outlining it. I got like so far in, and then I was just like floundering, and I had to just shelf it, then come back a few years later, outline it, and then finish it. Last year I started a book that I wanted to have out for Halloween, and I had kind of a loose outline, and I just kept saying something's not like clicking with this, and that doesn't normally happen for me. I normally, once I dig in and get to know the character, I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And it was so out of character for me because I just dive in and I go with it. And it was just months of getting nowhere. And my husband, I sat down with him one night and I was like, this book isn't coming together. And he's like, well, you keep talking about this other project that you're excited about. Maybe you just need to sit down and write that one and get that out of your system and then come back to it. And as soon as I started writing this current project I'm working on, all the ideas started clicking in place for that other book. And it was like, it just opened up my creativity. And I was like, well, now I know why I couldn't write her book. It wasn't ready yet. But as far as picking projects, I've got like 5 different tentative outlines for this year for like which books I'm going to publish.
You have 5 of them? Wow.
So I'm like, I don't know what direction I'm going. I've got so many different things that I could write, but I'm kind of waiting to see how a few promotions play out. I've got a long running series that's contemporary. It's a surf series, beach reads. I could probably wrap it up at the 8 books it's at, but I feel like there's a few little loose ends that I want to wrap up for me, for my readers. But at the same time, I'm like, it's just not doing as well as I wanted it to do with like the first 5 books are one character's POV, then 6 through 8 are all side characters. So I feel like maybe the audience loved my main character for 1 through 5 a little more, and they're not as invested in the side characters. So I'm like, is it the best business decision to jump into 9 and 10, or can I put it off for another year and focus on building my fantasy backlist? So it's kind of a wait and see. But right now I'm really vibing with my fantasy book, so I might just follow that, like where my heart takes me. In the past, I have been very, you're going to have to edit this out. I'm trying to think the right word. In the past, I've kind of looked more at what other people are expecting from me than what I really want to do and where my heart is. So right now, I'm just kind of, I think, since the whole landscape of publishing has changed so much in the decade that I've been here.
Oh man, yeah.
Like starting with a new genre, and everything's changed. Marketing's changed, and there's AI everywhere. It's
my gosh, the AI.
Like the whole landscape's different. So it's kind of just like, this is almost like a fresh start in a way. And at first that was scary, but I'm kind of like, I have like the world right here in front of me. I can do what I want with it. So I'm trying to be optimistic and just enjoy the process again. I think when you start thinking about trying to please everyone else, like I can have one reader that'll be like, can you just write a sequel to this book? And I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Like, but it's one person. It's not, and as much as I want to make that one person happy, I'm like, it can throw me off my plan. And so I'm just trying to stick to what I feel like where my heart is leading me right now. It may not always be the best business decision. I do project jump a lot. And I think I've heard you mention before in one of our mastermind meetings how you write something really dark, so you have to kind of offset it with something light just to kind of keep yourself balanced.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I am. Like when I was writing my Nightfall series, it just got so dark. I was like, I need to write something light and fluffy. And then I'll come back to this. I just need kind of to like recalibrate my brain.
That's exactly, I was getting ready to tell that story actually, and you remembered it for me. That's exactly what it feels like to me. What you were saying about being kind of pulled between what people expect of you, the market, what's popular in the market right now, and then being pulled between like what you really feel you want to write and what the story that like is stuck in your brain that you have to get it out. The pull between which of those you pick is very strong, and I definitely relate to that. I've heard not a bunch of authors online, but I do know a couple that I like, that we all seem to circulate around like the same half of the internet, some of us fantasy people.
Yeah.
And I've heard some of them talk about their process. And I know one has said that she typically writes, she's got lots of ideas, but she typically picks the one that's most marketable at the moment. And that's what she goes with. And that, I think you and I both, probably anybody, we could totally do that, but I think the writing would be different. I don't feel like it. I think people would be able to tell if I did that. And so, like when Fourth Wing really took off, I had already had, like, I knew I wanted to publish my own kind of dragon book. So it was in my back pocket. It was one of those like 5 outlines that you were kind of talking about.
Yeah.
It was one of those, like, I threw the spaghetti at the wall and that stuck, and eventually we'll like make the meal with it or something. I don't know. We'll make the rest of the spaghetti later, but for now it's up there. And then Fourth Wing took off, and I was kind of kicking myself a bit. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I should just start writing that now. That way, like, I can have that done. It'll be ready to be published. It'll be published like Fourth Wing's released. It'll publish right before the next book. Everyone will finish reading Fourth Wing and then want dragon stuff, and my book will be there out and ready for them. And I wanted to do that, but kind of like what you were saying about continuing your series and the readers you have there, and how you felt about the characters, I really needed to wrap up some loose ends of my own. And I knew, just thinking ahead a little bit, that if I jumped especially from Curse of Wings and Darkness, which is probably my darkest story, there's some pretty heavy things in that one. I knew if I had jumped from that to this dragon project that I'm writing right now, actually, Trial of Flame and Wings, which is also very heavy. It's a very like war-esque fantasy book. And I knew that my poor little heart wouldn't be fully fulfilled. I knew I would burn out doing that much in that space. And so could I have done it and probably had a little more success with that book if I had gone ahead and released it already? Maybe, but I feel like on the back end, I probably would have needed some time off afterwards. And I may not have gotten as many books out or been able to be as invested in those projects and really do them the justice that I wanted to. So that's just how it works for me to keep burnout at bay and to keep creatively interested. So
I learned that lesson the hard way. I wrote a book in 2013 that I thought was just like, no one's gonna buy this book. It was this fluffy. It's Starlight is the book, but it's just a cute YA girl and a guy in a boy band, and I was like, nobody's gonna take this seriously. Like, I just like laughed so much while I was writing it. My sister and I were just like, she was reading it as I was writing it, and it blew up. And I didn't realize how commercial it was. It was just like a one-off for me. It was like just a fluffy, fun, like, I don't normally write very heavy romance. So it blew up, and people were just like, it was at the height of One Direction. So it was just like, it was lightning in a bottle for me.
Uh-huh.
It did so well. And everybody's like, I want more, I want more. And I wrote a novella that I really didn't want to write, but I was like, well, I want people to like me, and I want to keep these readers happy. And the novella did not do as well because it just didn't have the same vibe and the same tone. And it's not even published anymore because I was like, that was a lesson learned. But, I did learn a lot from it. But I realized at that point, like, you've got to write what you want to write.
Right. You got to have fun with it. That's what Winter Witches was for me, too. I felt kind of stupid writing it, even. I thought, this is like you said, it's not, no one's going to take me seriously. It's some rich white girl with rich white girl problems. And no one's going to give a crap about this ex-mean girl suddenly having, like, going back to her ways a little bit to get back at some high school nemesis she had after she hadn't seen her for so long. No one will care about that. But it's the one that I do have kind of a divide in my readership. There are people that are in that camp that adore those characters and are very excited to see where they go. And it's interesting to me because some of the people that love that book are not the people I would have expected. Like like when I find them online, they're people who read really dark romance, very heavy books. And then they tell me, like, they comment on some of my posts, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get Marley's book. She's gonna be so fun and she's so different. And I'm like, I never thought that you would enjoy that, but I think it kind of goes in the same vein, like you're talking, it has to be fun. It's escapism. It felt like escapism for me to write, because I've never thought of myself of ever being like Madison Sinclair or any of the Sinclair sisters in my life. I've never had money like that. Never been able to just travel when I want. But it was fun to be somebody completely different for a little while, and it made returning to Curse of Wings and Darkness, this really dark storyline, it made it so much easier, because I had spent all of winter writing that really fluffy book and just giggling to myself. And like you were saying with your sister, I did the same thing. I didn't take the book very seriously, and so I started sharing it chapter by chapter on Patreon, and that's become something that I do every winter now with those books. That entire Season of Witches series, I post chapter by chapter when I start drafting it on Patreon, just because it's fun, and I don't know, it keeps things fresh. And yeah, you should write what's inspiring.
When you're not taking it too seriously, like, I can get so serious and intense about my books and every word choice and every plot twist. But when you're just having fun with it and you're like, well, nobody's going to read this, who cares? That's like when I've had the most fun and the books that have done the best.
Yeah, I feel like my writing is a little bit better when I let go a little like that and write more in that headspace. So I never thought I would be the kind of author that would publish a lot of those kind of fluffy romances. Like, I thought Winter Witches would be a standalone just for fun, because I was having a really rough time and I had that idea and I just needed something else to do to keep away the winter blues. And so I wrote that book just thinking, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. Maybe it'll be a free book on Patreon or something, maybe it'll be what I do in my newsletter to get people into my newsletter. And then I ended up really enjoying it at the end. And then I published it. And then I thought about more ideas. And here we are now. I've got not just a winter series, but I've got like a summer series planned, a spring one. I have all these ideas now because it's just so fun. And like you said, I think when you let go of that and just write what's fun, I think that really fun things come out of it for other people, like your readers and stuff. So,
and like you said, the escapism and kind of that universal fantasy of like, just, I mean, who doesn't dream of being rich and being able to just do whatever they want with it, or dating a celebrity, or just something that's totally out of your character and outside of your normal life. Like,
it's so fun.
It puts people in a different way.
I think so too. So I'm glad that I've published those books. I didn't expect that to become so much a part of my process. Like, I never intended for it to be staggered like that. Because I do know that a lot of my readers, it's like when Sarah J. Maas comes back to Instagram, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, the next book's coming. ACOTAR is continuing. We're finally getting the next one. And then it's a new cover reveal, or, oh, by the way, I'm publishing this other book now. And I know that frustration. And so I've seen it in my readers that they get kind of frustrated. Like, I started Curse of Wings and Darkness, and I have a lot of people who are really excited to see the next book in that series. And when I posted, oh, the winter book's coming next, everyone was like, so I have to wait a year now? And so, yeah, I know that in the world of like indie authordom, for a long time, rapid release kind of was our silver bullet for indie authors versus traditional. Like, hey, we can publish a series too, but we can do it faster. You don't have to wait as long as like the traditional books. And that has really been, for the longest time, kind of like instant success for a lot of people. And I feel like because the landscape has changed and those lines between like traditional and independent publishing have blurred enough, I don't feel like readers mind so much if there's a bit of time between those releases now, especially by indie authors. So it just sort of works for me to stagger everything that way.
When you
Even
get
though, I mean,
rapid release, I mean, it's a little overwhelming sometimes for readers because they feel like they have to catch up.
that's also true.
They get a little inundated with it.
I think that I wonder sometimes if that strategy specifically, like rapid release on the indie author side, I sometimes wonder if that is what has really fueled all of the Goodreads challenges and this sort of anxiety that seems to be kind of prevalent online about reading as much as you can, and reading how as fast as you can. I wonder sometimes if that has contributed to that. And I don't know how I feel exactly as far as how should you read this many books. And I know I think this week some of the online drama was people questioning whether you really could read 16 books in a month. Like, okay, are you actually reading those books? And regardless of the opinion, the opinion there, I do wonder sometimes if that strategy and that pressure was felt also by readers and not just the authors. Like you said, I don't think anyone thinks about it being overwhelming for the readers too.
Yeah, it's just like when they get so many in a series, they're like, I can't catch up. And
Right.
a lot of times they just kind of dip out and have to find something else.
That's true. Take a break from it for a while and then come back later. And yeah.
Yep.
So what is your writing we've talked a little bit about how we interweave these we have the two genres, and the way it works for us is working between the two to keep us kind of fresh and make the writing feel new. What does your actual process look like? So it's a week of writing for you. What does that kind of look like in your world? How do you
as far as when I start a project, I have to outline. I outline in as much detail as I can. And when my outline hits about what I feel is about 85%, that's when I will start drafting. And I don't outline to any kind of beats. I don't use any kind of method. I tell people it's completely feral. I just go in with a blank Word document. I type up every single thing I can think of that will happen in this book. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's random things, like something will just pop in my head, like a moonstone necklace. And I'm like, okay, just write that down. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what it means, but I just kind of follow the subconscious flow. And once I get a lot of notes, I just will number a Word document, either 1 to 20 or 1 to 25. And I just start puzzling it in where I think it will go. And I just kind of feel through the ebb and flow of it. And then after I kind of have what I think is a good outline, I will go through and highlight every character's name with a different color to make sure that they're not getting lost in the story.
That's a good idea.
And then I just start drafting. And I leave enough room for the organic things to happen, because something will always happen that I never would have come up with in the outlining process.
For sure.
I have to write in order. I cannot jump around. I cannot skip scenes. When I used to do that, I never finished a book. The first time I wrote in order, I finished it, and that is what I stick with.
Same. That's how I do it too. Mm-hmm.
And it kind of motivates me because I always know there's one scene in every book that I can't wait to get to. So it's the build up to it, because I'm like, I can't just skip to it and write it, because it's not going to have the same impact and the same emotion if I haven't written everything up to it.
That's how I feel too. I feel the same way.
About 10K in, I will go back and edit the first few chapters once I've found the voice, kind of make sure it feels right. And I do edit as I go, which a lot of people say don't do, but it works for me because I don't like heavy edits. I don't like getting to the end of the draft and having to redraft. Usually my first draft is very clean, but by the time I'm done with the book, I've read chapter 1 8 or 9 times. So I do a lot of editing as I go, so I don't have to do multiple passes on the back end. And it's just kind of a straight through process every time.
I like that.
For me, so that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I love about any kind of creative endeavor, but writing especially, is there's so many different ways to do it. I almost feel, especially through talking with other authors and hearing your process and how other people work, I know that typically the question is always, when people ask like what's your process, they're usually fishing for, are you a pantser or a plotter? And now people are a little more like, okay, well, there's a little bit in the middle, there's a plantser. And I've always told people I'm more of a plantser because I don't heavily outline. I do like a skeleton. I do use a method. I use Dan Brown's 7-point plot method. And then from there, I do kind of like your brainstorming. I'll like drop something in, like in between these two plot points, I know that somebody finds a necklace, or I'm stealing your example, but my outline is typically maybe 2 pages, if that. Usually it's like 1. Like I can see the whole book right here on my little computer screen.
That's what mine is.
Yeah. But the more I talk with other authors, it's really hard to even define myself that way now, because plantser means so many things. Like some people like may say you're a plotter because you do outline so much, but your outlining method doesn't fit what people what a lot of people, because some people are using these structures that are predetermined already, and you're not doing that. You have your own. And so some people might say you're not a plotter, you're a plantser.
Right.
So I feel like there might be more within those 3 things. It's more like it's not like it's 3 individual things, but I keep thinking of it as like a scale. Like we're all somewhere in here.
Right. And I tried to do so many different, like 12 beats, 15 beats, all these different things. And it was like my brain cannot wrap around it. I don't know why. But if I feel like when someone says, well, what's the catalyst in your book? I'm like, I don't know. Like my books always have a catalyst. And after the fact, I can look at it and say, oh, this is the moment where like it launches into Act 2. If I'm trying to outline it and say, this is where Act 1 ends and this is where Act 2 starts, I'm like, I can't find it. It's just like I'm boxing it in. I've just got to have it wide open. Yeah. And then I'll kind of like, when I'm going back through it, I'll say, okay, this is really slow. I need something to kind of lift the energy. And I'll be like, there's, this big moment just happened to kind of come back down the hill.
You hit the nail
all over the place, but
I think there's a lot of similarities between our styles and what we write, I think. And you definitely said what I was thinking. I was going to say that when I use a lot of those structures, or I try really hard to stick to outlining, you said boxed in. I was going to say, I feel like I have to fit a mold.
Like a formula.
Yeah, like the formula's already there. And I think we've all had that experience too, where we've read a book where that like everyone likes to pick at this with mystery books, especially. Can you guess the mystery and the twist? Mm-hmm. That's always like I don't know, it's just kind of a thing that is more in the front of your mind, but it exists in every other book. It's just like we're not looking for anything specific, but I think we've all definitely read those books that are so formulaic that you already know where it's going and you can probably guess what will happen next because it does fit a mold so closely. And to me, those books are fun and they're interesting, and there are definitely readers that love that. Some readers just love the expected.
Right.
But
it's like a Hallmark movie.
Exactly, yeah.
All the Christmas movies that are exactly the same. And my husband's like, you already watched this? I'm like, no, but I'll watch every last one of them and love them.
And I do too. But if I'm creating, I can't quite create that way. I get bored. Mm-hmm. I get bored if I have to fit a formula like that. And so that's why I just create like a skeleton of an outline. And then as I think of things, I file them away as I draft it.
If I try to write to a formula, I'm like, okay, someone's got to get hit by a car or struck by lightning or something because I need to amp this up.
Yeah. It feels too flat. I agree with that. So let's see. We have a little bit of time left. I want to make sure I have all the time that I want to do all of our normal scheduled activities for this podcast. But man, you and I could talk forever, Nikki, and I definitely do in some of our earlier, like previous conversations, because we do see each other pretty often, almost weekly now.
Right.
And so we could talk forever and ever, but for the sake of the podcast, we always play a game when we have a guest on. So I want to make sure that we have the time to play the game. And that game is Bookish/Author Would You Rather? I think we all know how Would You Rather works, so I don't think I need to explain a ton. You're given two different options to pick from. Usually neither of them are very great.
I know, I was like, this feels ominous already.
And you have to pick the one that's the best of the worst, essentially. So I do have a couple of these. I found some of them online. They were really fun. I had a great time searching. So if you guys listening and watching like this game in particular, let me know in the comments. Maybe put your own suggestions for Would You Rather, and we can all chat in the comments, and we can all decide what we would rather do, and then maybe we could do it again, because I had a really good time looking at some of these questions. So let's get into it. This first one is more of a bookish one than an author one. It is, would you rather crack the spine of a paperback or ruin a hardcover book's jacket?
I am a spine cracker. I actually enjoy cracking the spine of a book. I love the way it feels in my hand.
I do too. I want to feel like all of the pages in my hands too. So I like to crack it. You can tell on the, if you go and look at my paperbacks.
Like, like, you're a demon, but I'm like, it's just so satisfying.
It is. It's satisfying, and it's like part of the journey. I really like looking at my paperbacks on my shelf, and you can tell at what point in a book I was really focused on reading it. Like, oh, clearly that third act, she was really into that one, because you can see that big, like, you can see like a big right there. That's where that scene was. So I'm the same way. I love hardbacks. I wish they were not so dang expensive, because they are beautiful. But because they are so beautiful, I almost can't read a hardback. Like, I almost can't read it in my hands because I don't want to mess it up. It's so funny how the two are totally different.
To be pretty.
Yeah, it's not meant to be read. It's just supposed to be looked at.
Exactly.
I'm glad we're in the same camp.
I've never met another spine cracker. So.
I don't know if I have either. We might be, there are definitely people in the comments will be screaming at us, and that's fine. Okay, the next one is, your book cover sucks, or your readers start finding mistakes in your book after publication.
Which I'd rather have a bad cover.
It's my mind is immediately like, oh, I don't like either of these, but also you can fix both of them.
Yeah, that was my thought. I was like, well, I can just find another cover designer if I have to.
Right. I feel like the easiest would be fixing the cover. And not, I feel like it would be harder to do the editing, because then my brain is immediately like, okay, there are 300 pages in this book. I've already missed this once. Are there any more? And I feel like it would drive myself nuts. I get a little bit more anxiety at that than needing to switch the covers. And I do my own covers now. I took a Photoshop course. I'm still learning stuff. And so there's a lot of pressure there too. But I think I would rather fix the cover later and have a not so great cover out than risk having a really bad book.
Right. And I'm like, if it's a bad cover, it's probably one that I designed. Because
Right.
my cover designers are so much better than me. So if I put a bad cover out, that's on me anyway.
You know, I guess I did kind of have, it's funny that I have this question, because the first version of Winter Witches, when I originally thought it would be a standalone, I had a character artist, and I really liked the character art, but it was the very first book cover that I did, and it did suck. And so now in hindsight, I still think I would rather have a sucky cover, because fixing that was not that hard, and then the book was already done. And I also did that cover myself. It just looks a lot better now. The character art was gorgeous. It was kind of a cartoony style that we see all over now in like the new adult romance. I love it. And I have those available as stickers in my spring tea shop, in the description box. But as a book cover, the way that I had put it together just didn't work. So yeah. I guess I did kind of have that experience. It's funny that was on
really bad covers. Luckily, they were back like 2013, the early days where we all were like buying an $8 photo and slapping some text on it.
Yes. This next one. Okay. Would you rather have dinner with your protagonist or the antagonist in your book? I think this one could
Depends on the book.
yeah, I think my answer would change depending on which book I'm talking about.
My current work in progress, I would say the protagonist. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with my vampire series. I would love to have dinner with Angel Ramirez. He's pretty yummy. I think I'd rather go on a date with him than take out the villain. The villain in that story is real bad. Definitely don't want to go out with that guy. Red flags all over. But in my some of my other fantasy series, maybe.
Right.
I like a really morally gray. I like morally gray characters. I like when the main character that's portrayed as the good guy is kind of morally gray, and I also like when the bad guy is morally gray, as in like you can see how the bad guy got there. Like you have a little empathy for that guy too.
Yeah, I love a good villain story.
Oh, I love it. They're one of my favorite characters to write are the villains. Okay, the next one is, would you rather write late at night or write early in the morning?
Late at night.
Same for me.
3 a.m. is the best time for my brain.
Oh my gosh. I love to work late at night. If I can write early in the morning, but it's probably because I stayed up that long.
Yeah, I told my husband the other day, I was like, I'm not writing at 7 a.m. unless I've been up all night.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm just more creative at night.
Yep.
Okay, would you rather write a series or a standalone?
A series of standalones?
That is also possible.
That's what I'm working on now, is a series of interconnected standalones. But I would say a series. I just love to immerse into the world and with the characters.
I do too. And I also feel like, not that I give this too much thought, but I also think it's just a really good business strategy.
Yeah. It really is. People like to sink their teeth in something.
Right. And there are some people, even if they don't really enjoy a series, they have to finish things, you know? And so they will read all of them, even if they don't particularly care for it after maybe book 1 or 2. They want to know what happens, so they'll go ahead and read it all.
I had someone do that, and every review she left me on Goodreads was 2 stars. I still don't like her writing style, and I just wanted to reach through the screen and go, honey, let me buy you someone else's books.
Oh, yeah.
I was she was hooked enough in the story that she needed to know.
That's true. I think in that case, it's one of those things where it's not on you. It's not that your book isn't good. It's just that it's not for them. You know?
Right. I just want to email her and be like, here, I'll give you all the spoilers. Stop leaving me 2-star reviews. Because if you don't like the voice in book 1, you're not going to like it in book 5.
Oh my gosh.
It's so funny, though. You just have to laugh it off. It's not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you have to have thick skin in this business for sure. And I think a lot of it just kind of boils down to that. You're not a terrible author just because you're struggling or because you don't get a lot of sales. Your books are good. There are a lot of authors out there that are fantastic, but don't sell very many books. And there's a lot of other reasons for that have nothing to do with their books, you know? It's just, everything is a niche and you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Exactly.
I think some people read my books. I've had a couple people that don't read fantasy at all, but they read through and they enjoyed all of my Guardians of the Six Gate trilogy. And they read it mostly and enjoyed it because they knew I wrote it. Yeah. And they weren't even people that I know personally. They're just internet people, you know, that I've talked with maybe a couple of times, or I see them routinely on my YouTube channel. And they read it just because, they see me on YouTube and, I don't know, I guess they think I'm fun or something.
You are fun.
Oh, thank you. I like to think I am. Maybe not to everybody. Okay, there's one more. This is an easy one. Would you rather read by the fireplace or by the beach?
By the beach.
You'd rather be on the beach?
I think so. I just like the ocean. I don't want to get in the ocean because I don't want salt water in my eyes, but I just like the vibe of the beach.
Yeah. I don't know. I like doing both of those things, but to pick
Mhm.
one is hard. This is why Would You Rather is hard. I think on the regular, I'd rather be by a fireplace.
Yeah, I think neither of them's a bad
Cozy.
option.
Oh,
So,
yeah. They're both fantastic. That's like a rarity. All of these were terrible things. And the last one was a nice good one to end on. All right. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end of our time, sadly. Maybe we could, I don't know, maybe we'll have another episode in the future as we get more books out and we can talk about some other projects. So I do, before we end every episode, we always talk about finding joy in like the little things in our daily lives. So I try to remind myself every single week, if not daily, to find more joy. So something this week that is bringing me joy is my Patreon community. That's not just a plug, because I do plug it in all of these podcasts, because the extended version of this podcast does go to my Patreon, but I am having a lot of fun over there trying out new things and getting feedback from my community there. We're a pretty tight-knit group. There's not a ton of us over there. But I do value them. They give me all the feedback. They always tell me what they think, what they enjoy, what they like. They suggest things to me all the time, and it's been a huge help in really like my YouTube content mostly, but also it's just a nice support system and it's a fun place to connect. So I am having a lot of fun with them, and my monthly challenge series on YouTube. That has been fun, and especially talking about that challenge series with my Patreon members. So, Nikki, what is something that's bringing you joy this week?
I would say writing sprints with friends. I have been more in my book than I've been in a long time, and that feels really good because being productive and being busy and writing makes me like feel really energized. I actually love being productive, so that has been really great. And as a bonus, this little puppy girl back here in the
Oh,
center,
look at her. She's so
she's
sweet.
always a little happy spot in life. So
Oh, I love that. Well, she's adorable. I have also been really enjoying writing sprints. I don't know how popular they are anymore. They used to be all over YouTube.
yeah,
And some people still do them, but I feel a little like maybe creators got burnt out on hosting them, as some things just like in life got kind of crazy the last few years. But that is also something I'm enjoying and want to return to. So I would love to return to my weekly live streams, and I've been brainstorming forever and ever about how to bring that back. That is also something I've been pitching over on Patreon and online, and maybe we'll return to that also. Speaking of projects, Nikki, are you in a place where you feel like you can talk a ton about what you're writing right now? Is this your next publication?
I think it is going to be my next publication. I went back and forth about like, do I hang on to it and wait and do like a rapid release? But then I was like, I don't like to hang on to books.
I
When
don't
I'm
either.
done, I like to get them out there. I haven't revealed the title yet, but by the time this goes live on YouTube, it's going to be like right around the time I'll be announcing it. So it is a YA
Ooh,
witchy romance. It is called Love Spelled,
I love
and
that.
it's about a magical cupcake. And that is all I'm going to say for now.
A magical cupcake. Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
It's been
I
a lot of fun to write. It's reminded me a lot of like when I was writing the boy band book and I was just having fun with it.
oh,
So it's
that
been a
is
really
so
good
fun.
feeling.
Well, I'll definitely push this out when this episode goes live. I'll pitch it everywhere, and we can plug that for sure. That's awesome timing. That's when you'll be announcing that. And of course, guys, I always leave in the show notes and in the description box here on YouTube. I always link all of the social media that I can find for our guests. So for Nikki, it'll all be in the comments. I've been all over her website. It's adorable, by the way. All of her books are listed there with her all these series that we've been talking about. So definitely go and check that out. So check out all the links down below. Where are you most active? Where do you typically engage
Usually
people?
Instagram.
Okay.
I'm an Instagram girly. I'm just on there scrolling all the time.
I am too. That's typically how you and I connect too. So I figured that. And that's where a lot of my community seems to be too. So if you like my books, I promise you're going to like Nikki's stuff because we've got a lot of the same vibes and we write pretty similarly. So definitely go and check her out for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we kind of wrap up? Nikki, anything you want to pitch, any particular book or anything?
I can't think of anything right now.
All right. Well, if you think of anything later, we can get it in the comments or add to later. But I am so glad that you've been able to hop on with us. So for everyone listening and watching, thank you guys so much. Make sure that you have liked and subscribed to the YouTube channel if you're watching there. That way you don't miss any of these. I try to schedule them out pretty far in advance so you can kind of see who's coming. And of course, we push it all out on social media, so make sure you're following us all there. That information is all down below. If you aren't a Patreon member, you should definitely go and check it out. Fun fact, when you join my newsletter, there is a code in the newsletter so you can get 3 months for free of my Patreon. So if you want to go and binge watch all of the previous extended versions of this podcast where I have been doing my read of Curse of Wings and Darkness, the entire novel, you could go subscribe to my newsletter, go click on that code at the bottom, and you can get 3 free months. So you could do that. Past that, it's only $5 a month to join. We do a lot of fun things there. I push out all of my early access to stuff, so you get early announcements. You see inside my process. You see the raw edits of things, too. Like I said before, I push out my winter book on there, and that is before it ever goes to my editor. So there's always like typos and stuff. So it's just kind of fun, I think, to see where we start and then where we end. And that's very much what my Patreon community is all about, is just connection and the transparency. So if that's interesting to you, check that out below. This week, in the extended version, we are continuing the read through of Curse of Wings and Darkness. We will be reading chapters 8 and 9. So if you would like to read along with me, or you like audio version of books, you can get that because I'll be reading it aloud. And I'll be telling you about the kind of behind the scenes of the story and chapters as we encounter them. So that is Patreon only. So thank you so much, Nikki, for joining me. I'm so glad you were able to be here. This was so much fun. So to everybody, not just Nikki, thank you guys for being here and listening with us and hanging out. I love to hear from all of you guys, so leave your comments below with thoughts. Make sure to follow both of us on our social media accounts. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Don't forget to find more joy in life because you are worth it. And as always, read books, be kind, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!